Welcome to this latest edition in our video interview series here at iConnect. My name is Richard Albert, and along with Tom Ginsberg and David Landau, I'm a founding co-editor of iConnect. And today we continue our series in five questions that we ask to a public law scholar about he or she, in this case he, how he engages in his research and what he is writing about today. And today we're joined by Judge Lech Garlicki, a former judge of the Constitutional Court of Poland, former judge of the European Court of Human Rights, and today he's joining us from St. Louis, where he's a visiting professor of law at Washington University in St. Louis School of Law. Lech, thank you so much for doing this. We're very happy to see you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
I should also note, Lech, two things. The first thing is that you're a dear friend to the ICON-S family of entities. ICON-S, iConnect, ICON, you're a board member of ICON, so I think the co-presidents would want me to thank you for all you do for the society, so thank you. The second thing I want to let you know, Lech, is that you were nominated to be interviewed in this series. So when we publish these videos on the blog, there's always a note at the end of each blog post that says, if you'd like to nominate someone to be interviewed for the series, please let us know. And you were nominated by two people. So you have many fans out there. Like, no surprise to me, probably not to you either. Let's begin. What are you researching and writing right now?
Well, I'm doing parallelly two different things. One is to follow events in my home country, namely Poland, which are not very encouraging, but they're also quite interesting from a constitutional point of view. The way how the Constitutional Court and now also the other courts are being included into some process of political absorption. What are the ways for the courts to defend its independence and integrity? What are the possibilities of European bodies to be involved, particularly the European Court of Justice of the European Union? This is, of course, extremely dynamic, not always very present, but this is something I, of course, feel emotionally to be involved in a quite obvious manner. And of course, there is a lot of scholarly writings on it. I've published recently something about the disintegration of the Constitutional Court, and there are many other authors also dealing with this. The other one is more peaceful subject. This is the sexual orientation, or rather the protection of different sexual orientation in the case law of constitutional, supreme, or supranational courts. Actually, I'm dealing with the problem to what extent are or have been courts involved in the process of recognition of same-sex marriage or other type of civil union, to what extent the role of courts was only to confirm decisions taken by legislatures, to what extent the courts were more or less the main actors in telling the legislature you must act. And this is interesting because in the former situation, there is still not clear entirely what is the constitutional rank of the right to marry of same-sex couple, if any. This is only the confirmation that the legislature is free to accept it, or maybe also not. In the former situation, when it is decided by the courts, it's usually decided on a constitutional level. And then we know that this is, or that it is not, a constitutional rank of this right. So this is another very dynamic process. The decisions of important courts arriving almost on a weekly basis. And this is something I like, something I would like maybe to write sooner or later about.
Well, I look forward to reading that. Let me ask you now, how do you write and when do you write? Do you have a strict schedule that you keep every day or some days of the week, or do you just write whenever you feel moved to write?
Well, it depends, of course, on my general schedule. Even if I'm retired, somehow I feel I have a lot of things to do. What I usually try to do is to write at home. I do not like to sit in my office unless I have some other things to do, I mean, administrative things or students. But if I want to write, I have my books at home, I have my computer at home, and this is the place I feel the best. I usually try to work in the mornings, maybe not at 5 a.m., but like starting from 9 a.m., and not to do anything which I regard as difficult or challenging later in the day. But of course, it's not always possible. If I have something I like to do, some topic or some component of something I'm researching which I like, then of course I would devote more time to this. Is this something I do not like? I will try to postpone it as long as possible. But generally speaking, I am a morning person.
Yes, and of course you travel a lot, so that influences how you write. When did you know, that this was a life you wanted to lead, to be a legal scholar, to be a law professor? When did you know?
It's difficult to tell. I knew relatively early in my life, at least already in high school, that I want to be a lawyer, which was relatively easy because my father was a lawyer and he was a good lawyer, so I respected him and the profession. Then at the university, I realized that not only private practice, but also doctrine may be interesting. And then by a series of, as usually, coincidences, I moved from private law to constitutional law as far as my interest was concerned. With constitutional law, of course, it was the only way to do it was to become a scholar, or at least to start some kind of academic research on it.
Let's stay with your time as a student, Lech. Thinking back on that time, is there an article or a book, some kind of publication at the time that was influential to you then, that continues today to be influential to you in the way you think about the law, the way you think about problems?
Well, there were some classic books about the concept of Act of Parliament, concept of regulatory powers of the executive branch. But of course, this is a completely different system in Europe. So these books, even if they were written still under the communist system, they were very heavily influenced by the classic German theory. And this was very logical. Maybe it was not very close to the reality at this time. But this was something I really liked because of its logic. But of course, this is an ancient history. For my real academic life or for my real interest as a researcher, probably it was much later, like 10 years later, when I started to focus on judicial review. Then I read some publications of Capelletti, very famous Italian professor, once, and this was somehow inspiring. There was this casebook in English prepared by Capelletti and Cohen, published, I think, in West sometime in 1970s. This was something I really liked. And maybe this was something that encouraged me to read more and to study more about judicial review.
So like we've learned about what you're researching and writing now, we've learned about how you write, we've learned about influences on you as a scholar. Now let's talk about your publications. You've written many, many items. I think the number is over 300 books and chapters and articles and volumes. It's really quite outstanding, the legacy you've built of intellectual learning and scholarship. Is there maybe one, hard question I know, is there maybe one among your publications, perhaps a publication in English, because you've written in other languages, perhaps one in English that we can share with our readers and viewers, because I will link to that publication when I publish this video for our readers and our viewers. So is there one that you are really, really fond of, that is maybe very important to you, that reflects your thinking and your approach to public law?
Well, of course, for a person like me who mostly writes in my native language and for my native readers, it's very easy to say something, but you will not be able to verify it. And of course, those publications I liked most are in my language. As far as English is concerned, well, I was thinking about these two articles I published in Icon in the mid-2000s, particularly the one which dealt with relations between constitutional courts and Supreme Courts. In these systems where these two courts coexist, it's usually not an easy coexistence, and usually there is some kind of tension or even conflict. Then the problem was, is it endemic? Is it just a part of the game? Or is it something which should not exist? My opinion is it is endemic, as long as it is kept in a, let's say, cultural dimension. It doesn't make too much harm. But this is something that probably for an American reader who is accustomed to have one strong and respected Supreme Court may not be so easy to imagine that there may be another court, and these two courts would always claim, I am the most important, I know the best.
Well, we'll very happily link to that piece. I've, of course, read it, and I'll look forward to sharing that link with our readers and with our viewers. Lech Garlicki, former judge of the Constitutional Court of Poland, former judge of the European Court of Human Rights, board member at ICON, and currently visiting professor of law at the Washington University in St. Louis School of Law. Thank you very much, Lech, for joining us for this series in 5 questions.
Thank you very much. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you so much, Lech. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.